Uh, Sometimes the translator has to work in clouds, or in some other tools or client server scenarios, and they are sometimes not very useful for translator. They are useful for companies more. They are built into security and all that stuff, and sometimes it's very hard for translators to keep something because you submitted your work, you lose everything. It goes somewhere to the server, and when you have the next assignment, you can access the translation memory, maybe, or maybe the agency side didn't update that memory with your last task yet, or maybe something else. So we'll dive a bit deeper into several cases when working condition in apps are not so friendly as you might expect. And of course, I'm not pretending that I will describe every scenario possible in the world, so we'll work in. Why is it necessary? Why do we have to keep all this at our fingertips? Because translation memories. Sometimes you use it the same terms, the same terminology, the same setup for one industry, for example, for agricultural machinery, and you may have several clients from this industry, and it's better to keep everything intact, so you don't think twice what each metal thing presents. And not all those cloud tools allow you to use the same glossaries for different clients, because each client pretends to use their own tool, or if you use, for example, if you use a cross for one client, you can't use the resources you created for this client for another client if the another client also works in a cross, because you can't just put a check mark and you are there. And of course you have legal implications, because sometimes the text you translate is very technical or very confidential or very something, and you need to ask your client permission. So may I use it, may I keep a copy, may I use it for myself, may I use it for examples of my work, for example, or something else. And asking these questions helps you build relations with clients, because these are the questions that promote some mutual understanding, that you also care for your work and all that. And of course, you may have to work for big companies where there is no one to ask, so you should check the NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and terms and conditions if you are allowed anything there. And if you're working for European clients, it's the same GDPR thing, that if you use some personal information, so and use your discretion, because if you are working in a long chain of LSPs, sometimes something may get lost, and it's way too often then you receive the next assignment and you see that all that you translated in the previous assignment has not been updated to the server translation memory. So you have to translate the same thing, or maybe they think that you should translate it all over again. But sometimes if you keep copies, you might see that the word count is twice as much in your favor, for example, of the next assignment, and then they gave you. So what tools will cover? In a Facebook translation group, I made a small poll, and the worst nightmare for translators was XTM. So we'll cover it. We'll cover another German thing across. It could be a web version or it could be a desktop version, but still it's a very, 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 very ultra secure thing that doesn't allow you to work no step left or right. We'll cover smart link. It's also a popular tool, but it's almost online. But and we'll cover mem source and a general approach to some proprietary tools. Big agencies also like to make their own tools. They think that something they did is more useful than other options, but sometimes it's not. And in the end, a few examples where to use the data you managed to gather from all those tools. So the next one goes to XTM. It's a total online tool. It's more project management than translation, but sometimes you have to work in it. And the best approach is to ask the project manager if you can receive the task exported to XLIF format. But sometimes the people who are using this tool are not very proficient in technology, and you have to do everything yourself. So the best thing is to have a preview as an Excel extended table. So I have an example below with Ukrainian translation, and you can translate that Excel file in whatever tool you have, in your favorite tool, where you can use all the resources you have, and you have to manually copy and paste back in the XTM, or you can write a macros that does it, but macros sometimes may be tricky if it misses the cell. But even if the project manager gave you the XLIF file, there is also a bit of Las Vegas there, because sometimes it won't be imported back, and you'll have to do that copy pasting, manual copy pasting yourself. Still, I have two clients that have to use XTM. There's nothing they can do not to use it, and I found out that manually copy pasting about 100 lines is still way faster than working in XTM itself, because this tool can garble your translation. The search, if you search for some term, it could be take you forever, and there may be updates, there may be glitchy user interface and all that, and that's the best thing to handle it. It's export in whatever you can do. Even copy pasting back is better than anything else. And now another monster. It's across. One thing you can do is you export two files, source and target file, when you finish working on the file, and then you align them in your other tool that is more user-friendly. But sometimes, if you have, for example, if you have German clients, they like to put InDesign files in across, and not everyone has InDesign in their disposal at their computer to use it. So it's this making alignment from two files becomes a bit tricky. There is another way. In across there is one button that turns it into correction mode, where you can have your file in two columns, source and translation, and you can download it as an HTML file, so you have a truly bilingual file you can open with Excel and then have it at your disposal. This thing works best with InDesign files when you don't have InDesign, Adobe InDesign on your computer. So you have something editable, something that could be imported, for example, in MemoQ, even without having the native application. So the next one is SmartLink. It's totally web tool. Sometimes also you can coax the project manager to export the task and import them back on their side, but you might be not that lucky. From my experience, I used QA export as a Word file. You have this table in Word where you can make a revision phase, or when I have sometimes I have to translate one and the same thing both into Ukrainian and Russian, so I do Ukrainian translation, and then I do Russian translation using that Ukrainian bilingual table as a reference. And another way is exporting. The clients tend to send bits of 100, 200 or 50 words, bits, small bits in a SmartLink. You can export all them as CSV, and it's a table format. And then sometimes when you have time and you have passion to do all that, you take all those hundreds of files and you receive one big reference for your work later in Excel, when you can import it somewhere where you have. And now to proprietary tools. A friend of mine gave me this screenshot. I worked also in this tool for Nikon company, but the last thing from there was please use Google Translate. I had to, a friend of mine had to translate this manually, but that was the last thing. This is another project in there. That's, as you can see, it's totally minimalistic. You can do anything. From the first glance, you work there online. You press the button. You send the task, and you don't have access to it. But here goes another tool, AB Screenshot Reader. It's most useful for something that's displayed on screen. And this is a very, very useful thing, where you can take a part of your screen and it gets OCR'd and gets exported, for example, into Microsoft Excel or whatever the variants. You select the table, you press that sign there, and you receive it. You receive it already in the Excel. And memsource. Memsource is a very. It's quite useful, but it's also client server, and if you want to have something for yourself, you have to look into My Documents folder, and if you use a client, a memsource client, it stores it somewhere in My Documents. You have all those files you worked for in the tool. But if you open the memsource file in some other application, you have to change something, do something with text, because text is in parentheses. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, 30, 100, and so, and they are plain text. And some time back, in 2012, I think, I made a rather straightforward way to fight all that, to make all those run regex tagger, and 3 rules. It's simple tag, opening tag, and closing tag with digits, and to make those tags back in MemoQ, and it works ever since. And still, if you were use Trader Studio, if you prefer using it, there are 2 more ways, and there is another solution for MemoQ from Marek Pavelec, who is a Polish translator, and 2 solutions for Trader Studio. One is you import mxlif memsource files, and another one is you are connecting to memsource servers using your studio, and that's the really best one that we have. And some other. It's now popular SmartCat. You might ask for project manager rights, so you can export to xlif format and import it back. I use it with my friends who gave me all those rights. I said I won't do anything else between exporting and importing, and it works. There. And so we managed to get all those data. What to do with them? And the very first one, you keep your own translation memories. Translation memories is important because if there is something you translated 8 or 5 or 10 years ago, it is there for this client, and sometimes on client side there is some disruptions, there could be anything, but you have your copy back. And you have it at your disposal. So if you check new files against translation memories, when I worked for one big client, it was way too often that they send something, and I see that from my translation memory that I did almost the same thing 3 years ago, but something got lost on their side. Okay, it's not my problem that they don't keep records. It's not my problem that they pay me. And another thing, if you need to make term bases, if you have time for it, or if you have courage, you can upload these files to one-click terms. One-click terms, you might Google it. It's Czech online service. It's free for students and for academics, and it's free for 1 month for everyone else. And it is the best one for extracting terminology in the world. You upload it, and sometime later you have a list of terms that are with their translations as well. Am I right, Irina? Okay. And another very useful thing, you can use Muse in MemoQ or autosuggest in Studio, but for autosuggest you need a lot of more data. In MemoQ you might have 3,000 words you translated, and it already will give you some more predictive typing predictive typing suggestions. And if you work on the same topic for a long time, it saves you about 1/3 of pressing buttons. So you don't need to press keys. It gives you suggestions of 2, 3, 4 words. If you in Ukrainian, you may change endings, and it's good to go. You may make a LiveDocs corpus in MemoQ. LiveDocs is a most undocumented feature there, but it's most useful compared to other tools because no one other has it. Sometimes it's better than translation memory because when you search it, you're receiving results as in context. So you see not only this sentence, but previous and the next one. You see where it goes, where it makes sense, and all that. And the main thing, you control what you have. You control the results of your work, and you may use it if there are no legal implications. The text is translated wasn't very confidential and all that. You might use it for some other client as a reference or whatever, and it could be useful as well. And there is a couple of words. If you have those preview files, for example, you may make pairs of it. There is also one thing, DT search. It's a local search engine from that has a plugin into Trados Studio. That's another way of making live docs in Trados Studio, but that's too long to discuss. It deserves one. So I'm trying to make it next slide, but it's dead. So the next slide is simply my coordinates, where you can find me. І якщо у вас є запитання щодо...
And if you have any questions to this, then go ahead.
Thank you, Vatslav. It was very informative. And I have a question as to whether you have made a survey regarding the most useful apps among those you have mentioned, which could be used for the classified or sensitive documents, materials. Thank you.
The only thing maybe you can do about classified materials is ask your client, for example, if you have one term or one concept that you translated and you want to sometime to see it or to reuse it somewhere, it's to ask, may I use a screenshot of only this one, for example, because no one will allow you to have classified documents somewhere where they don't belong to. But you might ask your client, and sometimes maybe they will find out that exactly this one document is not that classified at all. And you might be lucky. But it's not. It's Las Vegas because.
Maybe you know which of these are the most secure.
They are the most secure one. Looks like a cross, because they have a just connection to their server and all that. But it's not that useful at all. Still, anyone can make screenshots anyway. So thinking of security, it's a matter of trust between you and the client. There is no way out. Хтось ще запитуйте, можете українською, можете російською, нема питань. Якщо хтось щось хоче.
If somebody would like to ask me in Ukrainian or Russian, please go ahead. Yes, I would like to add about one-click terms. Actually, it's a thing from Sketch Engine. Sketch Engine itself, if we say in the settings, it allows to make much more because there are more precise and finer, more sophisticated things to this. Somebody can be lazy. If we speak about Ukrainian corpus of Ukraine, it's Grok. This actually used this sketch engine. It can be used. So if that's all, then we can have a break. Thank you.